Have you ever had plans to sew, but despite your best efforts, nothing worked out? Welcome to my October. I had problems with pattern ease, I got some hellacious food poisoning, and I totally stressed myself out about sewing for absolutely no reason. It was almost a total fail. Today, I'm sharing what went wrong and what I learned during the process. Hi, I'm Tony, and this disaster is So Lounge. I'm so glad that you've come to hang out with me today and for me to share what happened in October and why I have so few makes this month. Now, I was debating whether or not to even make this video because I don't have a lot to show for what's happened this month, except a lot of unfinished projects. And I don't like having unfinished projects. I haven't had unfinished projects since college, probably, when I'd start sewing something and then get bored and move on to something else. So this is kind of a first for me in the last couple of years that I've been sewing regularly. But I thought it was important to kind of talk about what happened because I realized that there's probably a lot of other people out there who go through the same thing. And I kind of want to give you a pep talk, and I need to give myself another pep talk because I haven't given myself enough this month. And I just wanted to share like what happened and how I kind of came back from it and my state of mind right now. So I'm going to do this video sitting down because I'm still tired. I got really bad food poisoning. I think it was E. coli from some romaine lettuce that I had going on 3 weeks ago. And the first week knocked me out completely. I did not get any sewing done. I got a little bit of cutting done. And then last week, I started feeling a little bit better, but then I was really pushing myself to try and get all of these makes done in time for this video, and that just wasn't working either. So I've had to pause and kind of reset my focus to remember that I'm not under any deadlines to do anything. Like, this is my channel, and if I don't get stuff done, I don't get stuff done. It's not going to be the end of the world. I'm not going to get a bad grade. I'm not going to let anybody down. I'm sorry if I let you down by not getting all this sewn, but looking back, I really think that my sewing goals for this month were a little bit outrageous, considering how many things I've been able to sew over the last few months and, my success in those makes. So, back in July, I made 6 makes in 23 days, and that was a challenge. This month, I had planned to make 2 pajamas, 2 skirts, a fleece pullover, a top and a skirt, and then a, stretch velvet pullover. So I had planned to make 8 things in probably less than 28 days. So why I thought I could do that is completely beyond me. Like, I just really don't know what I was thinking there. But it put this unnecessary stress on me, which number one, I didn't need because I didn't feel well. But then number two, it was kind of like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I trying to kill myself to make a video for other people who like to sew, who know what it's like when things don't go right? So I'm here today to talk to you about some different things and kind of just some issues I had. So first off, I ran out of time. I thought maybe, I'll push this video to next week and do some sewing today. And I kind of have a headache. It got cold here in Texas and I'm just tired. It's like this food poisoning thing is still hanging out with me. I still don't have the energy that I had before it. And all I can eat is soup. So, that's not helping. But I thought it would be more productive to sit down and chat with you today about some different problems that I realized and some stupid things that I did in the middle of my stress, and then to actually show you like what I've done this month. So let's start with what I actually made. And the funny thing is back at the beginning of October, this was the only fabric that I had to actually make something with. And it was the one I was most excited about. So let's take a look at how my Halloween suit turned out. Ta-da! So this is my Alexander Henry Favorite Haunts fabric suit to wear to court on Halloween because, you know, I do have a little leeway in what I wear, but it can't be an actual costume. So I thought this was going to be the next best thing. Plan is to wear it with a black jacket. Now, the top is not finished because I need Grandma to help me with the straps to get them in the right place. And then I need to put in some snaps for the closure. Now, I used, and I'm going to sneeze in just a second, so bear with me. Okay, no sneezing. Okay, I'm good. I use this vintage Vogue pattern. This is Vogue 1812. I bought this back in the 90s, and it's just a very classic suit, and I made top C and skirt E. And for the top, they wanted me to put in 4 buttonholes and buttons, and I don't know about you, but I don't see how you're supposed to button buttons when they're on your back. I mean, like, maybe if you work at Cirque du Soleil, you can get your arms to button buttons behind you, but that's not going to work for me. So I thought large snaps would be the next best thing to do, and that is what I'm going to do. I have my my little marking sheet to line everything up, get it all marked, and then I'm just going to sew snaps on, because that way if I can't get the middle one, I can lean against a wall and pop it closed. But let me take this off, and then we'll look at the skirt, which I was really happy with the way this all turned out. The lining looks nice. It was pretty easy to make. I made this in the last 2 days. Now, it's not 100% finished. I wanted to do the straps, and then I'm going to finish the hem on this, so that'll be pretty quick. And then the skirt is all done. I just have to put in the hem, and I did put an invisible zipper in the back instead of regular standard zipper, and I need to put the hook and eye at the top. But just to show you, it is all lined. This does have a grosgrain ribbon facing, which made for a pretty quick project. If you can find this pattern out there, it's a really easy pattern to sew. I remembered it being easy, even though I was just learning to sew the first time I used it. And now I remember why. It's just the hardest thing really was getting the lining to lie flat, and when I cut it out, really, because it was moving around and sliding off the table. But I am happy with the way this turned out. It will be ready for Halloween, and I'm really looking forward to wearing this to court with a black jacket and some cute kind of witchy shoes. And check my socials to see what the finished ensemble looks like. But I kind of decided to go with this and get this done because I know that I really, really want to wear it on Halloween. So that kind of became the priority over the last few days when I realized that there was just no way I was going to get all of this done. All right, so now that you've seen what I did make this month, I'm going to show you the things that did not quite work out, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about pattern ease and how to figure it out if it's not listed on the pattern. So apparently I've been using a lot of simplicity patterns, and simplicity is really good about putting the ease on the various points of the patterns. And this time I was using this McCall's pattern. It's a McCall's level 1 learn to sew pattern. And this one is not specific number sizes. It comes in, small, medium, large, extra large, and 2X. So the size ranges are kind of between. So a medium would be a 12 to 14, and then a large would be a 16 to 18. Now, usually I wear either a 14 or a 16. So if it's a knit pattern, I've been sewing it at a 14 because the stretch gives me the fit I want. And if it's not, then I usually sew a 16. So the suit from Vogue was a size 16, fits me perfectly, no problems. But then with the simplicity patterns that I sewed for my jackets back in September, when I checked the ease on them, I didn't like the amount of ease on the size 16, which is why I made the bomber jacket and the oversized jacket both in size 14, because I could see what that ease was and I knew how I wanted it to fit. So The problem with these multi-size where, you know, it's like 12 and 14 are in the same thing, once you look at the measurements on the back, that's where you start kind of running into some problems. So I am like technically a 16. So, you know, I have a 38-inch bust, 30 waist, and then a 40 hip. But with the large, the range on the waist is up to a 32, and on the hip is up to a 42. So that's getting a little bit bigger. And I still made it in the large size because I didn't want it to be too tight. It's pajamas, right? And I didn't really know, looking at this, is this, what size is she wearing? I don't know. I have no idea. So I was making the same pattern for Anna's pajamas, and I asked her, like, hey, what are your measurements? And she's like, just make it whatever size is one up from what you're making. So I made her pajamas in an extra large, and they were ginormous. I mean, she came over and put them on and started laughing and was like, well, you can give them to somebody else because they're way too big for me. And by that point, I had already almost completely sewn hers. Like, they were all put together. I just had to hem them. And then I had sewn mine as well. And while I was sewing, the pattern pieces looked big, but they didn't seem like they were that big. Like it was going to be just this massive amount of fabric. And the reason why that kind of makes a difference is because it's a drawstring waist. So as you're cinching that in, it's like massive gathering at the top of you know, your pajama pants and at your waist, and it was really bulky and weird and just a total disaster. So I did rip out Anna's pajamas completely, and I'm gonna recut these using the large size pattern. Since these were extra larges, we did decide that one size down would be appropriate for her. For my pajama pants, because the smallest size on the pattern I have was the large, I basically had two options. I could go buy the pattern full price at Joann's, or I could wait for it to go on sale for $1.99, which I missed this month's sale, so I'll have to wait till next month, which I just didn't want to do because I would like to wear these before then. And so what I did was I ripped out the waistband seam and I ripped out the side seams, and I'm gonna have Grandma pin them on me so I can see exactly how much I need to take them in, and then just take them in. And if I need to raise that crotch seam, I'll just drop the waist seam to account for that, which will be fine because I don't mind if they're a little bit more low-waisted than intended. But I was thinking about this, and I was talking to my friend Jen, and she was saying that she had also recently had some problems with ease when she was making costumes. And so then I was thinking, like, what's the solution to this? Because if the pattern doesn't say it, how do you know? And then I remembered, ding, 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 the light went off. And if you measure the individual pattern pieces, let me make sure I've got one that that's not one of the cut ones. Bear with me for a sec. Okay, so if you measure the individual pattern pieces, right, minus the seam allowance, that will give you the actual size. So where's my tape measure? Okay, and y'all bear with me. I'm sorry, I'm still not feeling 100%. So when you measure the individual pattern pieces at the various measurement points, so let's say there's no ease on the pattern or you can't figure it out and you want to know what the bust point is, then you measure at the bust point on the pattern or the waist or the hip, because those are the three main points that they generally give you when they tell you the ease. So okay, so y'all, I don't know if this is during part of the delusion of the illness or what, because I don't remember when I cut these out, but it does actually have the ease measurement on here for the large, which would be 47 inches at this little circle hip mark. They don't have it marked for that waist, and I don't know what happened if I looked at the wrong pattern piece, looked at the back one, and it wasn't printed there. Okay, so I take back what I said. The ease is printed on the pattern. I didn't see it for some reason. But let's say you have a pattern and it doesn't have the ease on it, like a bunch of the Butterick patterns that I used back in July, you can still use the same method. So you just measure at the main points of the pattern. This is 12.5 across the front. So 2 front pieces, that means that would be 25 inches across the front. You could go to the same corresponding mark on the back, which I think was about right there, which would be, that's 13.25, so that would be 26, and then a quarter will be 26.5 once you add them all up. So then you take your 26.5, you add it to your 25 and get 51, and then you subtract your seam allowances off of that. So that would be 5/8 on 3 sides of the pattern, because you have a crotch seam and a side seam on each one. And then you would get that measurement, which presumably for the large would be 47, because that's what they said the amount of ease is. Now that I know what the ease is on this pattern, I realize that the 51 for the extra large is enormous. And just to go back to what the sizes are, the large, the hip size would be, the bigger hip size would be a 42, and this pattern is 47. So there's 7 inches of ease in the hip at this pattern, which makes it very clear that Anna should have worn the large. I would have worn a medium, just based on my actual measurements and not, you know, taking all this into consideration. So I have some work to do to go back in, and I might just wait on my pajamas until I get this pattern. And oh, this is McCall's 8063. If you want to check it out, check the ease. It's on pattern piece number 2, so you can see it. Anyway, I might just wait, because that probably is way too much to take in, because my hips are like 38.5. So that's a whole lot to have to take in. It might be easier to just rip them all out and then just recut them in the smaller size. So that's probably what I'm going to do. And I just need to remember to double check these things. I thought I did, like I said, and I don't know what point of not feeling great in October this happened, because I don't remember when I cut these. I think it was the week that I was sick, and that's when I cut them out and just wasn't paying attention. So it pays to pay attention when you sew and when you cut out your pattern pieces, so that you don't have to go through the process of wasting an entire day making 2 pairs of enormous pajama pants. The last pattern that I started and did not finish was this plaid skirt. Oh, that's the back. So this plaid skirt with pleats in it. It has a yoke waistband, and this is McCall's 7022. And I previously made this in view, which one did I make? I think it was view D, which was, or no, not that one, probably view F, which is just the bias cut full skirt with a yoke. And I wanted to make this pleated skirt in plaid. I actually have it in this really pretty kind of Crayola plaid as well. I was going to make it in both of these, because I really just love these fabrics. And I think these will be really fun to wear fall into the winter. Look good with black sweaters and boots, and you know, that's kind of my style generally. And first of all, the pattern has you draw all these lines for the pleats in place, and then you have to stitch them. And I hadn't transferred all of those marks, and then this fabric was hard to see, and it took forever to go in and redo that. I thought I was just going to fold some pleats and be done with it, stitch them down, we're good to go. But then they wanted me to baste in all these pleats. So these pleats are all basted in right now. I don't know if that's actually a necessity for this pattern. So when I make the next one, once I finish this and see like what the process is for actually doing that, and if it's necessary, I might skip that step on the other skirt. This was actually going pretty decently. I started this at the beginning of last week, and then I got to the yoke, and when I was ironing on the interfacing, there were some edges here, about 5/8 of an inch, on both of these outer end pieces that extended past the interfacing. And at the time I was thinking like, oh, my fabric must have slipped. Let me just trim them off. And that's where the problem started, because I was second guessing myself, and I know better than to do that. Like, if there's extra fabric, maybe number one, there's a reason for that. Maybe your fabric didn't slip while you were cutting it out. But number two, you can always adjust that later once you have it all sewn together. And once I got my yoke attached and I sewed it on and it looked really, really nice, and I moved on to the next step, which was putting in the zipper, I had no seam allowance on the back of the yoke to add the zipper. And that's a problem, because obviously I have to have a way to get on the skirt. It has to be a zipper. I'm using an invisible zipper, which, you know, it doesn't matter either way. If I used a regular zipper or an invisible zipper, I still need to have something to sew that zipper to. And it wasn't happening. So I really was really upset about this, because I really wanted to at least get one of each thing done. So I was hoping to have one skirt done, one pair of pajamas done, one of the pullovers done, and then my full Halloween suit. And I just was really tired and worn out, and just really frustrated with my stupidity of doing this, because I've been sewing long enough to know, don't do this. And I've done this before, but that was back in like my early sewing days when I didn't know not to do it, and that you could fix things at the end once things were sewn together. If seams were too long, or if things didn't line up exactly right, you can always trim and adjust at that point. So I was really aggravated with myself for that. And then getting really stressed out because nothing was finished. It was literally like everything I tried to work on wasn't working. And this pleated skirt was the first thing I started working on. So I was like, oh, it'll be so easy. The other skirt was super easy to make, the bias cut in the same pattern. I made it really quickly. You know, I made it in one day, hung it up, and then hemmed it. So it was super fast. I was like, oh, this will be easy too. Not factoring in having to stitch in all these pleats and mark everything. And I just was really upset about it, because I was like, why isn't this working? I shouldn't have done this. It was a stupid mistake. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to put it aside. I need to go buy more fabric, because I don't have enough for a whole waistband. And so I was like, I'm just not going to worry about it. And then the next day, I made 2 pairs of enormous pajamas. And then when I realized the problem, like, I literally spent all day doing it. Anna came over when she finished work and was like, yeah, these are too big. And I was just so disillusioned with the whole process, because, you know, I've been working really hard. I'd spent a lot of time doing this, and it just didn't work. And, you know, it's a frustrating experience when you have to go through that. But then I also had to remind myself that, like, okay, but do you want to do it right, or do you just want to get it done? And back in the day when I was learning to sew, the answer was always, I just want to get it done. And now that I'm taking the time to do things and to take my time to sew, because it is part of the process, I don't want to do crappy work anymore. I don't want to, you know, have to, you know, cheat the seams and figure things out and just have a poorly made garment that I don't want to wear. It's funny, but, you know, everything I made back in college, like, it either didn't ever fit because, you know, I had body dysmorphia and made the size too small, or because most of my designs, we had to use the dress forms that were at school, and they were all smaller than my actual size at the time. So my original designs didn't fit either, just because of like how we had to make them. But I finally am to a point in my life where, like, I really like what I'm sewing, and I really enjoy wearing what I'm sewing. And I don't want to wear something that's messed up, because even though it probably would never be apparent to somebody, you know, out on the street that I walk past, or even, like, you know, not grandma, because she would notice, but like anybody else, even though they wouldn't notice a mistake. Like, I know it was there. And it was just turning into this personal, like, kind of like conflict of doing it right versus doing it fast. And then I was thinking about the whole thing with sewing. And the whole purpose of sewing is to create something that you're proud of, and there's no rush to it. It's not, it doesn't have to be done by a certain time. I mean, like, I wanted to make this Halloween suit for Halloween. So, okay, yeah, there was kind of a deadline on that. But at the same time, if I didn't finish, I just didn't finish, so I wouldn't be able to wear it. And I will get it finished in time because it's just minor stuff. But let's say the top doesn't work out with the straps. Well, I just have to hem the skirt and I can wear a black top and a black jacket, and I've still got part of it to wear. So I think that the thing to remember when you're sewing and when you're feeling frustrated because things aren't working or because you have to keep ripping things out. I mean, like, seriously, y'all, I ripped out an entire pair of pajamas and half of the other pair of pajamas. It was a lot of ripping. Is to take the pride in your work so that when you do have to go rip something out or redo it, you are still doing it the right way, and recognizing that it's worth taking the time and taking that step to pause, number one, and think about, okay, why did this happen? Because I was rushing, because I didn't feel well when I cut this out, because I didn't check the pattern for the ease. And then number two, to, once you've recognized it, don't do it again, to learn from that mistake. And, like I said, I'm usually really good at checking the ease on my patterns before I cut them out. And I don't know what happened this time. Like, I just didn't see it. I remember looking for it and thinking like, it'll probably be okay. And now I've just made more work for myself. But that's okay, because it's all a learning process. And the thing about sewing, and a lot of people would agree with me on this, is it's not supposed to be a stressful process. And the whole point of it is to relax. It is to create. It is use your hands to make this original thing that nobody else has that will be unique to you. So don't stress about it. You can always rip out a seam. You can always change something to either make it fit differently or better. And, stressing just defeats the whole purpose. So that's kind of what I realized. And then I also realized that I need to be a little bit more realistic about the goals and expectations that I impose on myself. Because, prior to July of this year, I was sewing maybe one make a month. And you can go back through my video catalog and see how long it would take me to sew something, because I filmed it in these very rigorous, detailed steps so that if you wanted to make it with me, you could make it. And I literally went through every pattern step, everything, close-up videos, and it was very, very time consuming, but it also really slowed down the entire sewing process. So fast forward to July, I kind of changed the way that I'm making videos, and I want to make more things because I really enjoy making clothes that I wear. And it makes me happy to come into my sewing studio and sit down and make something. I mean, it's really fun, and I've always loved that. And it's just remembering that part of it is enjoying the process. And it's not just about, oh, I have to get this done so I can make this video. And I had to remind myself of that this month. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video and learned something from my struggles in October. And if you've enjoyed this video, you will definitely want to check out this one.